I'm John McKee, editor of Messianic Apologetics, messianicapologetics.net. And I would like to welcome you to this episode of Messianic Insider, your theology and news roundup for February the 17th, 2026. On our theology roundup, last week we started a multi-part series addressing one law or one Torah theology. Right now, we are still in the middle of going through the different Pentateuchal passages which employ the terminology one law or one statute. And for certain, this has not been something very easy for a lot of people. Many of you have appreciated the attention to detail which I am giving to this issue, in particular, going through the different Bible passages where the terminology, one law, one statute, is used. You do not often see that in this whole discussion. But for certain, there have also been some people who have not appreciated this study that much. And so many, because they're not used to going into the specific passages, one law, one statute, what does it mean in context? They're used to a cherry-picked version of this whole subject matter where you just see an internet meme, one law for the native and the sojourner. No consideration for some of the wider verses in which that statement appears. Many assume, and I would stress this, many assume falsely that if you do not adhere to a one law or one Torah theology, that you are telling non-Jewish believers to stop what they are doing, stop participating in Shabbat, the festivals, a kosher style of diet, stop participating in various outward matters of Torah, and return to a church setting, which is not what we're saying. This study is about evaluating, or in some cases, reevaluating passages we have heard quoted time immemorial on social media in different sectors, because the only way we're going to be able to fairly resolve this issue and bring some stability is by going in, evaluating what they mean in context, evaluating some opinions, Jewish, Christian, conservative, and even liberal, and hopefully find a better way to approach this controversial issue than what has been seen from the one law or one Torah submovement, which maybe it's not the intention of some of its teachers, but maybe it is, I don't know, has definitely been responsible for promoting a religious culture of legalism, judgmentalism, and a condemnatory spirit. Throughout this series, we have lost a few subscribers. This is a multi-part series. We're going to go into next week as well. Some don't have the patience. Oh, you're not one law? I don't want to hear from you. Others have been, finally, somebody's addressing this passage by passage. And next week, we'll be getting more into the theology, the philosophy, etc. But I would ask the very forthright and serious question: does one law theology have any kind of legitimate spiritual future? Does one law theology, not a Torah foundation in one's theology, understanding the Torah, prophets, writings, messianic scriptures, that's not, does one law theology actually have some kind of a spiritual future in terms of character development and transformation? Well, as we're going to be discussing throughout this study, I don't believe it does. These are some of the last people I would turn to if I were involved in some kind of a personal crisis, if I needed prayer, if I needed to have counseling for an issue. And I would never go with them into any kind of matter of spiritual warfare. because after all, a lot of them are cessationists and believe the gifts of the Spirit are dead. But we'll get into that um, more next week as we evaluate the ideology and the theological and spiritual components of this. All right, so today we're going to be reviewing numbers 15, 15, and 16. If you will, please turn with me to the Messianic Apologetics website, messianicapologetics.net. Click on the Articles tab and then go down to the letter O, where you'll see the article Approaching One Law Controversies, Sorting Through the Legalism. Click there, and this is where we left off yesterday, numbers 15, 15, and 16. And I stress, what are we mainly doing? What do you not see when the whole discussion and debate over one law or one Torah comes up? Do you really see a detailed examination of the actual passages? Of course you don't. All you see are different memes, different sound bites. You don't see an evaluation of detail. And that's what we're trying to do here. And yes, I would stress that there were some smart people in the past who were a little too dogmatic. And then when they were caught having cherry picked some statements, they were unwilling to recalibrate and make some necessary adjustments. And yeah. All right. So numbers 15, 15, and 16. Excuse me. As for the assembly, there shall be one statute for you and for the alien who sojourns with you, a perpetual statute throughout your generations. As you are, so shall the alien be before the Lord. There is to be one law and one ordinance for you and for the alien who sojourns with you. Numbers 15, 15, and 16, New American Standard. Numbers chapter 15 includes two passages which use the terminology one statute and one law and one ordinance. Numbers 15, 15, and 16, and also one law. Numbers 15, 29, and 30, which we'll be getting into tomorrow. While close together, both of these occurrences appear as two sets of specific legislation were delivered. So again, how many of you have seen this kind of terminology? There shall be one statute for you and the alien or the sojourner who sojourns with you. There is to be one law and one ordinance for you and for the alien who sojourns with you. And guess what? Little to no consideration for the actual context in which these statements appear. And what is that called? It's called cherry picking. Now, are there different Messianic Jewish leaders and teachers out there who do the same kind of thing with other matters? Yes, of course. And I've been critical of them as well. Go look at our frequently asked questions entry on Galatians 5, 2 and 3. Go look at 1 Corinthians 7, 17 to 24, and Paul's rule in all the assemblies. There have been plenty of Christian people who've done the same thing with other issues. But the hallmark of a good teacher, a good exegete of scripture, is to know when you've been shortchanged by popular trends, and you can slow down and you can say, all right, what does this mean in context? Our first our first selection, numbers 15, 15, and 16, and we'll get into 29 and 30 tomorrow, appears at the end of instruction detailing how various offerings were to be made, including the olah, or burnt offering, the mincha, or cereal grain offering, and the nesek, or drink offering. These different offerings were to be made by the Israelites once they were established in Canaan, and could have applied for a variety of circumstances, including special vows or free will offerings or festival offerings. Numbers 15, 3, New International Version. Important to be acknowledged in this is that the promised land was to be very rich in produce. Numbers 13, 27, 14:7, and the people would surely want to offer their thanks to God for his provision. Numbers 15, 1 through 13 details. Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, when you enter the land where you are to live, which I am giving you, then make an offering by fire to the Lord, a burnt offering or a sacrifice to fulfill a special vow, or as a free will offering, or in your appointed times to make a soothing aroma to the Lord from the herd or from the flock. The one who presents his offering shall present to the Lord a grain offering of 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/4 of a hin of oil. And you shall prepare wine for the drink offering, 1/4 of a hin, with the burnt offering or for the sacrifice for each lamb. Or for a ram you shall prepare as a grain offering 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/3 of a hin of oil. And for the drink offering you shall offer 1/3 of a hin of wine as a soothing aroma to the Lord. When you prepare a bull as a burnt offering or a sacrifice to fulfill a special vow, or for peace offerings to the Lord, then you shall offer with the bull a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/2 of a hin of oil. And you shall offer as the drink offering 1/2 a hin of wine as an offering by fire, as a soothing aroma to the Lord. Excuse me. Thus it shall be done for each ox, or for each ram, or for each of the male lambs, or of the goats. According to the number that you prepare, so shall you do for everyone according to their number. All who are native shall do these things in this manner, in presenting an offering by fire as a soothing aroma to the Lord. Numbers 15, 1 through 13, New American Standard. Now, at the end of this instruction, readers see the assertion, Kol ha-ezrach ya'aseh kaka et ele, as every native shall do so with them, the Art Scroll Tanakh. Given the orientation of ancient Israel implanted within the land, those who were Ezrach, or born there, should have naturally, out of the blessed territory in which they lived their whole lives, wanted to demonstrate their gratitude to the Lord in some tangible way. Whether this be an offering made during one of the appointed times or a free will offering. Sorry. These instructions were not only applicable to the Ezrach or native, though, but also to the ger or sojourner. Numbers 15:14 anticipates how there would be those originally outside of Israel who would join his assembly, beginning with the two conjunctions. The key, we discussed that yesterday, meaning and when. New Jewish Publication Society version. When this occurred, the ger sojourner was to make his offering before God as well. For the generations to come, whenever an alien or anyone else living among you presents an offering made by fire as an aroma pleasing to the Lord, he must do exactly as you do. Numbers 15:14, New International Version. The way that the ger or sojourner within the land of Israel was to make a burnt offering, grain or cereal offering, or drink offering was the same way that any Ezrach or native had done it. Okay, so we're dealing with a specific context here, various types of offerings to be presented before the Lord in the promised land. The way that the native was to do it was the same way that the sojourner was to do it. Numbers 15, 15, and 16 actually makes two summarizing remarks after specifying how those within the land were to make the different offerings. Verse 15 says, Hukah achat lechem veleger hagar hukat olam. For the assembly there shall be one statute for you, and for the stranger who sojourns with you a perpetual statute. Revised Standard Version. It is made quite clear, you and the stranger shall be alike before the Lord. New Jewish Publication Society Version, as Hukah Achat applied. Now, this is specific, of course. When either the Ezrach or native or Ger sojourner went before the Lord to present an offering, both were to offer the same measurement. It was not as though one had to offer a smaller or greater amount in order for an offering to be acceptable before him. Sojourners in ancient Israel, for example, did not have to offer more than native Israelites for their sacrifice to be acceptable before God. Roy Gain concludes, quote, the same rules for sacrificial accompaniments apply to resident aliens 15:13 through 16. Verses 15 and 16 emphasize remarkable equality. Resident aliens share the same legal status before the Lord as other Israelites. Unquote. Okay. Numbers 15:16 makes a further statement, which does appear to be more general in scope than just pertaining to how burnt, grain, or cereal and drink offerings were to be made. What is said is that Torah echat umishpat echad is in place. The same Torah and standard of judgment will apply to both you and the foreigner living with you. Complete Jewish Bible. To Richard Elliott Friedman, this implies, quote, Israelites are not privileged over anyone else. A country must treat everyone who lives in it fairly with equality, unquote. Thomas Dozeman also observes, quote, the laws concerning the resident alien provide a social and theological window into Israel's self-identity, because the Israelites viewed themselves as resident aliens in a land that God owned. Leviticus 25:23, unquote. The way that the Lord was to bless ancient Israel by giving them and welcoming them into the land of Canaan as a possession was to in turn instill within the Israelites the impetus to welcome sojourners in among them, who were not native born, but who would be represented equally before the jurisprudence of the Torah. Okay. Now, to be certain, one of the things which is difficult for a lot of people in one law or one Torah theology to process is that while native and sojourner in ancient Israel had a great deal in common, it's not as though they were 100% identical, okay, as is, of course, made clear by a lot of other statements appearing in the Torah. What's also very difficult to sort through is that a great number of critics, opponents of one law, one Torah theology, often fail to recognize that the Torah stresses the commonality of native and sojourner over difference. Okay. So one law is seen to overemphasize commonality to the point where there are virtually no differences of any kind. And we'll call it distinction theology, has a tendency to overemphasize differences at the expense of commonality. And, a big part of evaluating the ideology represented by these passages is that, and we'll be getting into this, later on in this series, native and sojourner had more in common than not. That's what the community of faith is to focus on. Yes, there were differences, and when some of those differences are pointed out to one law or one Torah proponents, they balk and they get really paranoid and they get very defensive and even belligerent. We have to emphasize in our Messianic community common faith, common elements first, and then fairly sort through various differences. Okay, let's get back into the study. Against some of these conclusions would be Jewish commentator Jacob Milgram, who only thinks, quote, although the stranger is placed on an equal footing with the citizen in civil law, there are a few significant differences between them in religious law, unquote. Possible differences between the native and sojourner, perhaps the most notable one referred to being Deuteronomy 14:21, do need to be considered. Proponents of a one law or one Torah theology frequently argue that the native born of Israel and the sojourner were exactly the same when they certainly were not. Although the differences between the native born and the sojourner in the community of ancient Israel were nominal. But why Milgram would classify Numbers 15, 1 through 16 as equality in civil law here, when this passage specifically pertained to offerings made to God and was most especially religious, is a bit odd. The scene of how this Numbers instruction would have originally been given to the Israelites in the wilderness, who had non-Israelite sojourners in the camp, should be recognized. Dennis T. Olson details how for the immediate narrative of the Torah, quote, offerings are made at the tent of meeting at the heart and center of the camp. Any non-Israelite groups within the holy war camp of Israel were apparently located on the fringes of Israel's camp, since no designated place was assigned to them in the camp's arrangement in Numbers 2, unquote. Far be it from the Lord wanting sojourners who had no tribal home of their own to be left out on the distant edges. Olson concludes that given the tenor of Numbers 15, 14 through 16, quote, these non-Israelite groups are welcomed into the center to offer their sacrifices and offerings. In this way, they are given the same status as native Israelites before God, unquote. Considering how both the native and sojourner were welcome in the camp of ancient Israel, Olson actually thinks that, quote, one hears echoes of a later affirmation, unquote, and then quotes Paul in Galatians 3:28. More immediate for the Tanakh were appeals made to the sentiments expressing the desire that foreign outsiders acknowledge the God of Israel in his holy place. Also, concerning the foreigner who is not of your people Israel, when he comes from a far country for your name's sake, for they will hear of your great name and your mighty hand and of your outstretched arm, when he comes and prays toward this house. Hear in heaven your dwelling place, and do according to all for which the foreigner calls to you, in order that all the peoples of the earth may know your name, to fear you, as do your people Israel, and that they may know that this house which I have built is called by your name. 1 Kings 8, 41 to 43, New American Standard. Another passage, also the foreigners who join themselves to the Lord to minister to him and to love the name of the Lord, to be his servants, everyone who keeps from profaning the Sabbath and holds fast my covenant. Even those I will bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be acceptable on my altar. For my house will be called a house of prayer for all the peoples. Isaiah 56, 6 and 7, New American Standard. Referring to the Genesis 12:3 promise of Abrahamic blessing, R.K. Harrison draws the conclusion, quote, while the ancient Israelites did not seem to have evangelized in the modern Christian sense, their faith was nevertheless deemed to be a legitimate sphere of participation for potential, unquote, adherents, although he uses the term converts. If ancient Israel was to demonstrate a proper obedience to the Lord and a fair system of statutes governed its society, then would the result truly be seeing outsiders recognize the wisdom of his law and a desire on their part to acknowledge him as the supreme deity? Deuteronomy 4:6. Proponents of a one law or one Torah theology, to be sure, will quote liberally from Numbers 15:15. There shall be one statute for you and for the stranger who sojourns with you. English Standard Version, and Numbers 15:16. One law and one rule shall be for you. English Standard Version. Now listen carefully, please. From a legal standpoint, it is most appreciable from Numbers 15, 1 through 16, to see how both native and sojourner in ancient Israel were to offer the same amount before the Lord in sacrifice, with the former not being required to offer more in order for a sacrifice to be acceptable before him. From a spiritual standpoint, though, should Numbers 15, 15, and 16 be something which today's Messianic believers use as a credo? It is undeniable that the sacrificial system does not have the same significance today in the post-resurrection era, subsequent to the sacrifice of Yeshua the Messiah, as it once did in the pre-resurrection era. Okay. And to me, that is just beyond dispute. And I'm not here to say that if animal sacrifices were to resume on the Temple Mount tomorrow, it would be some affront to Yeshua's sacrifice. Okay. But they would have to be understood within the context of Yeshua's sacrifice. Because I'm premillennial, I do believe there are going to be sacrifices restored to the Temple Mount in the future. Okay. When supporters of a one law or one Torah theology invoke Numbers 15, 15, and 16 in various teachings, what spiritual dynamics are they focusing their attention upon? As Hebrews 13, 15 directs, Messiah followers are to focus their attention mainly on offering up a sacrifice of praise. Through him, then, let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God, that is, the fruit of lips that give thanks to his name. Hebrews 13, 15, New American Standard. Okay. So, as I said, this study is cumulative. Tomorrow, we will be continuing by addressing Numbers 15, 29, and 30. And for sure, look, there are a lot of people out there. They've been pushing memes on the internet, one law, one statute, and they really have no idea the original context in which they appeared. There were specific instances where one law, that small L law, or one statute applied to the native and sojourner. And then, of course, later in our study, we've got to tally these together. We've got to evaluate what these all mean for the ideology, for the philosophy of the Torah, the Pentateuch. Yes, fair treatment for the native and sojourner in ancient Israel. Commonality for the native and sojourner in ancient Israel. But commonality does not automatically mean 100% or near 100% sameness, which is what frequently merits one law or one Torah theology being labeled as a false teaching and merits it criticisms of replacement theology and what have you. But we're going to be getting into that further on in our study. This is cumulative. This is not an easy subject matter to address, but it's been a long time coming for me, even though this article's been up on our website for years. Okay, it's nothing new, but a lot of people have asked for this study, and we're going to try to resolve this to the best of our ability. Okay, so let's now move on to our news roundup. We've concluded our theology roundup. We do the news roundup after the theology roundup because news is, of course, time sensitive and it changes from day to day. And right now, the whole world, I think, is watching very closely the negotiations between the United States and Iran on their nuclear aspirations, their ballistic missile program, etc. We're also steadily seeing more U.S. naval forces directed to the region. So there's going to be a lot of talk, a lot of commentary, a lot of speculation on that. And we do need to be paying attention for certain. There are a few other things we're going to be going to, but most of this is going to be about the situation in Iran. Number one, be praying for peace. Israel, Gaza, the Middle East. Iran, for certain. Number two, be praying for peace. Russia, Ukraine. We got a little bit on that. And number three, be praying for reason and sanity to prevail here on the American home front and the Western Hemisphere. All the stories I'm about to go through, these will be available for you to look at later today when this episode is archived at messianicapologetics.net. All right, so our first story, this is from yesterday, My Charisma, February the 16th. Is the Board of Peace a historic breakthrough or prophetic sign? Why Trump says it has unlimited potential. Hardly a surprise why there are various people out there speculating on Donald Trump's Board of Peace and whether or not it has any kind of significance regarding the end times. And here, this article specifically references 1 Thessalonians 5:3, warned that when people declare peace and safety, sudden change can follow. Yeah, there's a lot of speculation. Is this going to be the alternative to the United Nations? Are you going to see the beast rise up out of this? I mean, we just have to keep tabs on this. And as I've said before, going back to the turn of the millennium, the late 1990s, there were many people who were anticipating the anti-Messiah to come out of the European Union, i.e. some kind of revived Roman Empire, the European Union, especially with the euro coming on 2002. Others were looking more at the United Nations. With some of the work of Joel Richardson and his books, there are people who are looking at an Islamic beast to come forth. Now we've got this Board of Peace, and of course, who knows what's going to come next, right? So we wait, we see, and we just have to consider all various possibilities. And who knows what's going to be next, right? But we need to just be very conscientious of this. From Open Source Intel Defender, February the 16th, posted yesterday at 3:58 p.m. The U.S. military is continuing a significant buildup of air and naval assets in the Middle East, ahead of planned talks with Iran in Geneva on Tuesday, which have now concluded, by the way, to both intimidate Tehran and to have options to strike inside the country should negotiations over its nuclear program fail. Multiple sources familiar with the matter told CNN. Now, I believe, I'm not alone in this, that President Trump is wanting to have maximum flexibility regarding the situation with Iran. He's going through these negotiations, first in Oman, now in Geneva, Switzerland. They've concluded. We're going to see several comments on that. Yet he's also building up this significant, naval presence off of Iran. We already see the Abraham Lincoln task group there, and the Gerald Ford task group is on the way. And it's supposed to take about 2 weeks for the Ford task group, which has been in the Caribbean just north of Venezuela, to arrive at the region. And that's massive. That really is massive. Now you're seeing on social media from the Iranians a lot of this propaganda. We're going to be able to sink, all of the U.S. aircraft carriers. Right. No, it's not going to happen. But we don't want to be presumptuous. We know that pressure is building. As believers, we have a responsibility to pray for peace, but our primary responsibility is to pray for the believers in Iran, because there's a huge underground Christian community. We have to pray for the Messianic Jewish believers in Israel. And of course, we have to pray that all of them can have a divine supernatural encounter with the living Yeshua. Okay, here's a post from Visegrad 24. We mentioned some of this yesterday. This was posted yesterday. It didn't come across my feed, but here, former U.S. President Barack Obama clarified his remarks about aliens after media attention. On the No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen podcast, he said, "They exist, but I haven't seen them," joking that Area 51 has no underground alien lab. Later, Obama explained he has spoken quickly and meant no confirmed contact exists. He noted that life elsewhere is scientifically plausible, but interstellar travel makes visits unlikely. Okay, and the main thing that we are trying to pull from this, because look, all of us, especially if we grew up in the 1990s, into the 2000s, into the 2010s, we're all exposed to science fiction, right? Star Trek, Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, other series. Younger you are, the more inclined you are to think that, there's a big universe, it's vast, and even for many believers, you have to at least philosophically work through the question, are we the only sentient species in the universe? You at least have to just deal with it hypothetically. You have to deal with it hypothetically, the same way as you would deal with anything involving your life. Hypothetically, what do I do if I have a heart attack? Hypothetically, what do I do if I have a stroke? Hypothetically, what do I do if I break my leg and it has to be amputated? I mean, we all have to go through that kind of stuff. Likewise, hypothetically, what do you do? What would I do if on the other side of the universe there's some kind of sentient civilization and God has another story playing out or other stories playing out? So the fact that you would have such a high profile person as President Obama talk about this, we simply note this, we file it away, because the younger you are, the more likely you are to just believe there's more going on in the universe. I mean, I've got relatives, i.e., 2 sisters and 2 brothers-in-law. If you ask them, does God have other stories playing out in the universe? Yes. Okay, yes. To which I would simply say, look, when Yeshua returns, everyone agrees the secrets of the universe will be revealed. Now, I do also believe that if you die in faith and you go to be with him before the resurrection, you probably already know a lot of the secrets of the universe. So it just via your consciousness leaving your body and going to heaven, you're going to learn a lot more about the, the universe, different dimensions, etc. But yes, when Yeshua returns, everyone agrees there are going to be a lot of secrets about human history, about all this kind of stuff, finally known to us. Okay, our next story, and this is from 2CTV. This was posted last night, excuse me, 4:49 p.m. The IRGC has launched large-scale raids across Iran. Security forces are storming villages, raiding homes, setting up nationwide checkpoints, and going through citizens' phones and cars, searching for Starlink terminals and suspicious social media posts. And there's a 2-minute, 20-second clip you can watch regarding that. Yes, I am of the opinion that you're going to see, in all likelihood, regime change in Iran. The United States, Israel are likely to help with that in some indirect or major indirect way, bombing IRGC sites, taking out particular leaders. But ultimately, it's the people of Iran, just like back in 1979 when they overthrew the Shah, they're going to have to be the ones who overthrow the Islamic Republic. But yeah, to see that the IRGC they're looking for things like Starlink devices and what have you. Yeah, this thing is building. The pressure is building. It's going to reach some kind of a point in the not too distant future. I'll be shocked if a diplomatic solution is achieved. Likewise, from Visegrad 24, this was posted 5:01 p.m. yesterday. 27-second clip breaking. Street protests erupt again in Iran. This video shows tonight's protest in Abdanan. Okay, so yeah, keep the people of Iran in your prayers. And I would also stress my opinion that, like right now here in the United States, we're seeing growing anti-Semitism, growing anti-Zionism, anti-Judaism, etc. But we also know it's going in waves. So it's a push and it's a pull. It's a push and it's a pull. And just like it says in Matthew 24 that the end times will be like birthing pains. And when a woman is in labor, it goes through various phases. There's and then it stops for a while, and then another one, and then it stops for a while, and then it just gets more and more intense and gets more and more frequent. So that's what I see happening with anti-Semitism in North America, in the United States, because unlike 1930s Germany, where you did not have a very open, welcoming society, particularly of other ethnic groups. The United States is a nation of immigrants, right? And so we're used to a plurality of groups. We're used to a plurality of peoples. In my own immediate ethnic heritage, I am Scottish, English, and German. Now, I mainly identify as a Scottish American, but having English is easy to identify as a British American, and the German thing comes up at various interesting points. But because of the plurality of cultures seen in America, we will have a push and a pull, a start and a stop with anti-Semitism. It won't be like 1930s Germany, where it's just like, overwhelmingly, Nazi propaganda sort of thing. Likewise, with the end times and with something like the Islamic Republic of Iran likely coming to a conclusion, coming to an end in the not too distant future, there will be starting and stopping, push and pull with the Middle East peace process, with the Middle East situation. It won't just be they're all turned over to the beast, or it won't just be they're all turned over to what God wants to do. It's going to be, back and forth, back and forth. And while in the short term, we could see the Islamic Republic overthrown and some kind of a constitutional monarchy or a democratic republic in its place, that would be more short term. It's the long term we have to be looking at. So keep that in mind, because there are a lot of people who are speculating. There are a lot of people who they are not necessarily looking at this in terms of the big picture. They expect everything to happen all at once. Some of them have been influenced by, a 6,000 year chronology, which, believe me, just like one law, that's something which likewise needs to be reevaluated and probably discarded. Discarded. Sorry. Not probably, because in the Holy Scriptures, we are admonished to look for these religious, political, socio factors. All right, our next story, and this is also from 2CTV. There's a 1-minute 6-second clip. It's from 5:23 p.m. yesterday. The Israeli Air Force has intensified long-range aerial refueling drills, a key component of sustained operations inside Iran. Fuel tankers in the air mean preparation for extended air superiority. Okay, so this is from TUSI, and we have definitely discussed if the United States in particular would be getting involved in a conflict which Israel starts, bombing particular sites in Iran, military sites, laboratories, that sort of thing. The U.S. would likely be involved, by offering logistical support, refueling planes, intelligence, other kinds of just more defensive matters, and only called in for the things which the United States alone can do, like B-2 bombing missions. These are the kinds of things we have to keep in mind. But when the IAF is seemingly training for refueling, which would be required in some kind of military activity, we take note. Okay, now we're going to be covering a few opinion points as it concerns the U.S.-Iranian negotiations. And just like last spring, when we were monitoring things which led up to the 12-day war, we likewise have to be monitoring opinions as they may be leading up to some kind of a point event. And we monitor things and we monitor opinions, so when things possibly do occur, we are not caught off guard. Because unfortunately, many people, and I know, and I love you all, but many people in today's Messianic community, they wait for some kind of a big major drama to occur. And then, oh my God, holy crap, what's going on here? That's when we have to step in and say, look, we've been monitoring this for months. Why are you so shocked? Are you just not paying attention? So that's why we look at some of these opinions. So from Open Source Intel Defender, this is from 6:16 p.m. yesterday. Speaking to reporters earlier aboard Air Force One, this 43-second clip, President Donald J. Trump said that he will be indirectly involved in tomorrow's nuclear talks with Iran in Geneva, which are now over, stating that Iran is a tough negotiator, but that he hopes they are going to be more reasonable, claiming that they want to make a deal with the United States. So the president, who wants maximum flexibility, says it's going to be tough to come to an agreement with Iran. Hopefully, they're going to be reasonable. Hopefully, something will happen. But here's our next story from Vivid on X, posted 6:36 a.m. yesterday. But this is very important to keep in mind, and there's a video with it. About 1/3 of the United States Navy, that would be active Navy, has now been deployed to the Middle East and is heading straight to Iran. Vivid's conclusion is war is inevitable. And unless Iran can really surprise us and really just totally infatuate the U.S. negotiators, some kind of war, some kind of conflict is very, very likely. I mean, really, to me, unless the Islamic Republic says, "Hey, we know it's over, and we want to come to a negotiated conclusion. We want our different leaders to go into exile. We want you to leave them alone for the rest of their lives, and we're willing to turn over control of the country to the exiled crown prince, and we'll just leave them alone." I mean, really, and let the succeeding government dismantle our nuclear program and then enter into economic treaties and economic agreements with the United States and the West, unless that is what the Islamic Republic is willing to offer the United States, it would seem very probable that we're going to see a conflict in the not too distant future. Okay, from Open Source Intel Defender, and this is from 8:48 p.m. Last night. Tomorrow's meeting in Geneva. Again, we're trying to stay up to date with what people are talking about. Between Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and the American delegation led by White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner are expected to be a make or break moment to determine whether the two countries are moving towards a new nuclear deal or full-scale war, according to Axios. Okay, now it does not appear on the other side of the negotiations, which have concluded for right now, that we're getting ready to go into war immediately. It does appear that there's going to be some more potential talk. So don't get too anxious right away for some kind of a military conflict with Iran. Okay, to the Western Hemisphere, this is something we have to keep in mind as well. From Rapid Response 47, this is from 8:00 p.m. yesterday, 1 minute, 8-second clip. POTUS, that's President of the United States. Cuba is right now a failed nation. We're talking to Cuba right now. I have Secretary Rubio talking to Cuba right now, and that they should absolutely make a deal because it's really a humanitarian threat. And of course, Marco Rubio is a Cuban American. Now that the intervention in Venezuela has begun to settle, and you're beginning to see some of the oil from Venezuela being shipped to the United States and what have you, Cuba, which was getting economic and energy support from Venezuela, is now on the table, and what's going to happen regarding Cuba. Now, in terms of the end times, in terms of prophecy, this really doesn't affect us. But Cuba is in our backyard here. It's only 90 miles from Florida. My sister Maggie, this was in 2015, my sister Maggie and my brother-in-law Taylor, they went to Key West on their honeymoon, and there's this big place where you can stand in Key West, get your photo taken. Only 90 miles from Havana, only 90 miles from Cuba. So many of us know people, Cuban Americans. This is something which is very near and dear to them. They want to see the old Cuba return. They want to see communism removed from the island. I certainly know many Cuban Americans in my time. So we'll see what happens. This is something which has been a problem since certainly the 50s and the 60s. From Open Source Intel Defender, this is from this morning, 6:52 a.m. During negotiations earlier this month in Oman, Iranian diplomats floated a total pause in the enrichment of uranium, the transfer of its current stockpile offshore to third-party countries such as Russia, and the cutting of energy, mining, and other business deals with the United States. Okay. And this is from the Wall Street Journal. So those are likely going to be some of the talking points, which, yes, were heard in part during the recent round of negotiations, but will be heard in other possible negotiations. Okay, back to the home front. Some of you all are already aware of this by now. This is NBC News. This was the first one I saw. Reverend Jesse Jackson, a civil rights icon, dies at 84. And the byline, our father was a servant leader, not only to our family, but to the oppressed, the voiceless, and the overlooked around the world, the Jackson family said in a statement Tuesday. So you can look through this article. And I know that some people, they really liked Jesse Jackson. Other people, he was too controversial for them. Certainly, he was a mainstay in politics and society here in North America. And some of the people who might be succeeding him, are they going to improve upon his legacy? Are they going to encourage dialogue about the areas involving the oppressed, those who need extra help? Or are they going to, double down more on the woke and the deconstruction and what have you? But Jesse Jackson has passed away, and he represented an era, many of us grew up in the 1980s, the 1990s, especially. We saw him interact with different politicians, especially people like Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, others, and we were influenced by him in some way. Because he was, a mainstay in the civil rights movement, and all of us were affected by his different points of view. Not that we agreed with him all the time, but he definitely represented an era and a generation which is passing away. All right. From 2C TV, this is from this morning, 7:36 a.m., and there's a 1-minute clip. Breaking, Iranians are still out continuing their uprising against the Islamic occupation as the second round of negotiations fail. So that is 2C's opinion. The second round of negotiations fail. Okay, and there are going to be some other opinions, of course, which we will see. So we got to evaluate all of this together. Are we going to see more negotiations? Did this fail? The situation changes from day to day. Now, let's change gears really quickly. This is also happening in Geneva today. 7:05 a.m., Open Source Intel Defender. Following the end of nuclear talks with Iran, trilateral peace talks between Russia, Ukraine, and the United States have now begun in Geneva. What is more likely, that we're going to be able to see some kind of a peace arrangement with the Islamic Republic of Iran, or possibly see some kind of an honorable settlement come forth between Russia and Ukraine, because that's a conflict which is now 4 years old. And we know that President Trump, since he returned to the White House, has really been pushing for this. And I've seen some, other, stories, especially from Secretary of State Rubio, where, it's really the United States. The United States is the only country which can, push hard enough to see the Russia-Ukraine situation come to an end, because ultimately, you're going to see a generation of Russians, a generation of Ukrainians die off. This war has been absolutely no good. It very much mirrors kind of the, stagnant trench warfare, although it is different, but very similar to the First World War, where you just kind of end up, locked in these different, lines, and you take a few miles and then you lose a few miles. what a lot of it has become. Although we also this conflict has also demonstrated this new thing of drone warfare and what that's going to mean for the future of war and battle. So we do pray for peace, Russia, Ukraine. Yes, we know. We're very much aware that we can't easily talk about it in the Messianic community because the second largest Messianic Jewish community after North America is in Ukraine, and the third largest is likely in Russia. And you do have Messianic congregations and synagogues here in North America, and they're divided over it. I know some families which are divided over this because they've got ties to the former Soviet Union. You know, one parent grew up in Ukraine, another parent or grandparent grew up in Russia. And anyway, I think you all get the idea. From Open Source Intel, 7:59 a.m. Just in, Iranian Foreign Minister Agrachi, we were able to rely on a set of guiding principles. You know, no specific time has been set, and it was decided to work on the text of a possible agreement, exchange the text, and then set another date for the third round. Okay, so from this report, at least, from the Iranian side, they're anticipating some kind of a third round of talks. Is that going to happen? We'll wait and see. We got some more on this in just a moment. Okay, 4 more stories to go through. From Visegrad 24, this 18-second clip, breaking street protests have erupted again across Iran today. Now, this is from 9:29 a.m. Today and tomorrow are the end of the 40-day traditional Iranian mourning period following the regime massacres of protesters on January the 8th and January the 9th. So what are we going to see over the next few days, really? You know, I don't totally claim to understand Persian culture or Islamic culture for that matter, but okay, it's been after this 40-day mourning period. Are we going to see another round of major protests? That's really what we need to be monitoring. All right. Here's an important story. Visegrad 24 from today, 9:53 a.m. And there's a 2-minute 51-second clip. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, recently designated a terrorist organization by the EU, conducted drills near the entrance to the Strait of Hormuz, a strategically vital waterway through which roughly 1/5 of the world's oil supply passes. Okay, now many of you, of course, have seen the maps. You know that if the Strait of Hormuz is cut off by the Islamic Republic, you know, 1/5 of all the world's oil goes through that. That alone would merit some kind of a military confrontation. Not to be too specific, although it was 5 years ago or so, my sister, who is now a lieutenant commander in the United States Navy, she was deployed to the region, and you know a lot of U.S. Navy and other NATO allied destroyers, they monitor that whole area through the Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, around the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula, and up into the Red Sea. That's where a huge amount of oil, gas, commerce, goes through. There's a lot of piracy in the area. The different naval destroyers and what have you, they function a lot like police cars. That is a major area just economically where you cut off the Strait of Hormuz, all of a sudden the price at the pump goes way up. So yeah, I don't deny the fact that the U.S. building up this naval blockade, this naval presence, it's got economic factor. I mean, nobody denies that. Yes, we want to see the Islamic Republic replaced with a better government, a more progressive government compared to what it has been. That's small p progressive. We want to see it be friends to the West, friends to Israel, a stabilizing force in the region, not a destabilizing force. But yeah, when the government of Iran does military exercises around the Strait of Hormuz, everybody gets nervous. And even some of the Arab governments, which have been, we're not too sure we want to see regime change in Iran, but then you clamp down on, well, how do you make your millions and stay afloat yourself? Oh, well, so I think you will get the idea. Okay, two more stories. Open source intel posted 10:21 a.m. CNN. U.S. officials say progress was made in the Geneva talks with Iran, although significant issues remain unresolved. According to the officials, the Iranian delegation will return within the next 2 weeks. Okay. Now, we know this is something which can change, of course. I mean, possible negotiations always change. But what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks? Uh, Within the next 2 weeks, the Gerald R. Ford task group should be in the region, joining the Abraham Lincoln task group. So by presumably the time there could be a third round of talks, the bulk of what are anticipated to be the U.S. naval forces should be in the region. So again, a lot of people speculate, look, Iran has no interest in cutting a deal with America. They're just trying to buy themselves time. But we know the situation could change, and we'll see what other bits of information come out in the next few weeks, the next few days. Okay, and finally, and this is kind of a summarization from Inside Israel Intel on X. U.S. Iran nuclear talks just wrapped another round in Geneva. What we know, a quote unquote framework was reportedly agreed upon. Talks remain limited strictly to the nuclear file. Iran refuses to include ballistic missiles or terror proxies. The U.S. has increased military presence in the region. Israel insists any deal must dismantle Iran's nuclear infrastructure, not just pause enrichment. And now the commentary, no agreement yet, just positioning. And here you see some of the analysis and conclusions drawn by Inside Israel Intel. The main conclusion is the real question is whether Washington demands dismantlement or settles for delay, because delay is not prevention, and Israel has made it unmistakably clear that prevention is the standard. Watch the next round closely. That is where red lines become reality. So the next few weeks regarding the Iranian situation should be rather fascinating to witness. And, the main thing that we have to be looking at right now is what's going to happen among the people of Iran. This past weekend in Munich, the major rally attended by the Crown Prince, along with the Munich Security Conference taking place. Other rallies in favor of the overthrow of the Islamic Republic. There was even one here in Dallas. I saw a little bit of it. So these are really big things which we need to be paying attention to. We don't wish to be presumptuous. I definitely learned from the late 1990s to, just be careful, leave everything open-ended, stress that it changes from day to day. But it's not difficult to conclude that we're barreling towards some kind of a point event with the Iranian situation. But the Lord is in control. He knows all things. And we as believers have access to the infinite power of heaven. We need to pray every day for his protection, his provision, and his supernatural guidance. And that concludes our stream for today. As always, on behalf of Messianic Apologetics, I would like to sincerely thank you for your ongoing prayers, encouragement, and support for all of our ministry efforts. Please do consider signing up for a monthly $25 or $50 donation. It will definitely go a long way to help with everything we've got going on here. If you have not already, please do visit my website, messianicapologetics.net, where you can access a wide array of articles, frequently asked questions entries, back issues of Outreach Israel News. You can take a look at some back episodes of Messianic Insider, different McKee moment shorts, and generally take a look at our ministry adventures over the years. Please be sure to give this episode a thumbs up or a heart. It will definitely help our exposure on social media. We will see you again tomorrow with another episode of Messianic Insider. Until then, may God bless you, shalom, and take care.